Hello everyone. Welcome to the 18th video of the distance learning program. I hope you all are having a wonderful spring, and I'm hoping that you and your families are healthy and safe. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Today's lesson is going to focus on verbs plus infinitives when we use a verb with an infinitive. And this is a very easy lesson, so you shouldn't have any trouble understanding this. It's very easy. So we're going to look at Unit 5B in the green book, the Ventures3 book, on page 60. But before we get started, I'd like to do a little bit of a warm-up. I'd like to talk about when do we use verbs and infinitives. Many times we use a verb plus an infinitive to talk about plans for the future, anything that we might do in the future. So the verb that you're going to use would be plan, that would be the main verb, and then whatever the action is that you're going to do in the future would be used in the infinitive form. So here are some examples. I plan to meet my friend after class. I plan to meet my friend after class. That would be a sentence that talks about something that's planned for the future. You're talking about something that's going to happen in the future. Plan is the main verb, but to meet would be the verb that you would put in the infinitive form because that's what you're going to do. Now I'm going to write a question and an answer on the board. Here's the question. Where do you plan to go? Where do you plan to go? And the answer is, I plan to go to the park. So the question is, where do you plan to go? And the answer is, I plan to go to the park. So what is the subject in the question? It's you. And plan is the main verb. And what are you talking about? Something that happens in the present time, in the past, or in the future? Well, if someone says, where do you plan to go? That means you're talking about an action that will happen in the future. You're going to go somewhere in the future, like tomorrow or next week. So the action that happens in the future is going someplace. So that's what you put in the infinitive form, and it says to go. So the question would be, where do you plan to go? Then the answer is, I plan to go to the park. So I is the subject, plan is the main verb, and the action that will happen in the future is going somewhere. So you use the infinitive to go. And this is where? To the park. So the subject and the verb agree. The subject and the main verb agree. I matches with plan. And in the question, it's the same way. Do you plan? You plan. The subject of this question is you, and the verb is plan. So, all you need to remember is that to make the infinitive form of the verb, you just use to plus the base form of the verb, the base form. So the present tense form. Let's look on page 60, lesson B, verbs plus infinitives. If you look at the grammar focus in part 1, it says questions and answers. Then right below it, it says infinitives often follow verbs that talk about future plans. So verbs that talk about future plans are often in the infinitive form. And remember, to make the infinitive, you use to plus the base form of the verb. To plus the base form of the verb. Now let's look at some examples. Here are some questions. Where do you plan to go? The answer is, I plan to go to the park. So, plan is the main verb, to go is the infinitive. Next, where does he plan to go? He plans to go to the park. So, in this case, plans is with an S because he is third person singular. So we need a verb that matches the subject, so you would say he plans. But the infinitive does not change, it's still to go. He plans to go to the park. Next, do you plan to go to the park? Now, when you answer with a short answer, you would say, yes, I do. And you use the same verb as in the question. It says, do you plan? So you would say, yes, I do. And if you want to answer negatively, you would say, no, I don't. Next, it says, does he plan to go to the park? And if you want to answer affirmatively, you would say, yes, he does. You want to use the same verb as in the question. It says, does he plan? So you would say, yes, he does. And if it's negative, you would say, no, he doesn't. Now, in the orange box below the questions and answers, there are many infinitives that often follow these verbs. Okay, so I'm going to read the verbs that infinitives often follow. Agree. Can and can't afford. Decide. Expect. Hope. Intend. Need. Plan. Promise. Refuse. Want. And would like. So many times, when you use these verbs, you need to follow them with the infinitive form of a verb. Now let's look at part 2, the practice exercises. It says, complete the sentences. We need to use the verb that's under the blank, and then the other verb will be put in the infinitive form. Because remember, the first verb often needs to take an infinitive following it. So 1A says, how much do you expect to pay for the concert? So remember, expect was in the orange box. So that's a verb that needs an infinitive many times. So the answer is no more than $25. Next, 2A. We need to use decide and the verb do in the infinitive form. But when it says, what have you, that indicates that you need the past participle for decide. Because remember, that's present perfect. So you would say decided. What have you decided? And then you put do in the infinitive form. So it would be decided to do for your birthday. What have you decided to do for your birthday? I'm going to an exhibit at the art museum. Next, we want to use afford and buy in the infinitive form. So it says, can you afford, and then you would say to buy a ticket for the show. Can you afford to buy a ticket for the show? Not really. I need to start saving money. Next, number 5. How is Tom going to go to the park? You want to use the verb intend with ride in the infinitive form because you can see those verbs under the blank, intend and ride. So you would say he intends with an S because it needs to match he as the subject. So it would be intends with an S, and then to ride. He intends to ride his bike. Next, 6A. We want to use the verbs refuse and go, but go will be in the infinitive form. And it says have at the beginning, so that indicates that it'll be present perfect. So have you ever, now we need the past participle for refuse, which would be refused. Have you ever refused to go on a trip with your family? And you would answer, no, I haven't. Number 7A, what did they promise their relatives? So we want to use promise in the past tense because we're talking about the past, and then we want to use the infinitive for visit. So you would say, they promised to visit this weekend. Finally, number 8 says, what is Chen going to eat at the picnic? And the answer would be, he wants to eat ice cream and cake. He wants to eat ice cream and cake. Next, let's turn to page 61 and do part B on page 61. So it says, talk with a partner, ask and answer questions about Sharon's plans. Look at her calendar, use the verbs in the box and an infinitive. What does Sharon plan to do on Tuesday? So you would need to look on Tuesday and see what her plans are on Tuesday. And it says she plans to go to a concert with Linda. It says right here, she plans to go to a concert. Here it says at 12:30 p.m., go with Linda to a concert. So she plans to go to a concert with Linda. Let's look at the verbs in the gray box. I'll read them and you can repeat after me. Expect, hope, intend, need, plan, and want. So let's make a question about an event that happens during this first week of May. You could ask a question that might be something like this about Thursday. You could say, what does Sharon plan to do on Thursday? What does Sharon plan to do on Thursday? And the answer would be, she plans to see the dentist. She plans to see the dentist. Or you could say, she plans to go to an art exhibit. She plans to go to an art exhibit. Another question would be, what does Sharon want to do on Saturday? What does Sharon want to do on Saturday? And if you look at Saturday, it says sit on the beach all day. So you could say, Sharon wants to sit on the beach on Saturday. She wants to sit on the beach on Saturday. Who does Sharon expect to see on Wednesday? Who does Sharon expect to see on Wednesday? If you look on Wednesday, it says meet Joe at the gym. So the answer could be, she expects to see Joe on Wednesday. She expects to see Joe on Wednesday. So these are some examples of questions that you can ask about her plans, and then you can answer the questions. Now let's go to part 3A. 3A, it says communicate. Work in a small group. Choose one item from each column. Answer questions about your plans. Let's look at the verbs in the left column. I'll read the verbs and you can repeat them after me. Expect, hope, intend, need, plan, promise, want, and would like. Then in the right column over here, it shows the times when these events might happen. So let's read those. Tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 2 years from now, in a few weeks, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now. So, we can make questions using these verbs with an infinitive and then the times in the right column. One question using the verb need, you could say, what do you need to do tomorrow? What do you need to do? Because do would be the infinitive form of the verb and the time would be tomorrow. Using the word promise, you could say, what did you promise to do next month? What did you promise to do next month? How about using the word hope? We could say, where does Sally hope to go next year? Where does Sally hope to go next year? We can now use the word would like. Would like. You could say, who would Jim like to visit 3 years from now? Who would Jim like to visit 3 years from now? And these are just sentences that I'm making up in my own mind. You can make some examples of sentences and questions in your mind too. And then you could answer them with statements. You could say, Jim would like to visit his father 3 years from now. Or Jim would like to visit his uncle 3 years from now. So these are just examples that you can use for questions and for answers. And I'd like for you to try to make as many questions using these verbs with the infinitive and the different times as you can think of. And if you have any questions or any problems, please remember that you can always call me or you can email me. Here's my email address up here, and you all have my text number. So you can either text me, call me, or email me your questions, and I'd be happy to help you. Please don't hesitate to call for any reason, okay? So it's great seeing you guys again, and I look forward to the next video. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.